Hello everyone, welcome to part 3 of my WrestleMania MVP LVP series. The series where I take a look at every single WrestleMania and pick out the most valuable player and least valuable player from each show. We've got 33 WrestleManias to get to. I've already done 6, so let's do the next 3. Now for today's episode, again, I point out the numbers and the order of these shows were done completely at random. I just basically punched all the numbers into a number generator, and they gave me the list with the order. Weirdly, that list was very front-loaded with like the later or more recent WrestleMania. So for today's event, we'll be doing WrestleManias 31, WrestleMania 30, and then WrestleMania 2, which is one of the earlier ones. But by doing 31 and 30, I've done all the 30s already, and it's like, man, you think those would have been spread out a little bit more, and but get the newer ones out of the way. I guess the older, more historic ones are more interesting anyway, just because of the the amount of time that has passed. So it'd probably be more informative for people who may have not seen those WrestleManias. But anyway, let's just jump right into the shows. WrestleMania 31. MVP for this one was a fairly easy choice. Had a couple of options. Brock Lesnar gave birth to Suplex City in the main event. That was pretty cool, even though it kind of hurt his matches moving forward, where they all kind of became, he just suplexes the guy for 10 minutes, and then they do whatever the fuck the finish is going to be. So that got a little old, but the line Suplex City, bitch, was actually a surprisingly good ad-lib from Brock Lesnar that helped further define his character, so he deserves credit for that. This was Sting's WrestleMania debut. Obviously, his debut didn't go the way we wanted it to, but still, it's Sting at a WrestleMania, and that deserves some level of recognition. I thought Rusev and Lana deserve some credit. Rusev really looked like a star in that entrance, and it's like, man, that match with Cena should propel him. It did not, but for that one night, Rusev looked like a star. And maybe he's repaired himself now that this Rusev day has come the fuck out of nowhere and gotten over. But speaking of getting over by accident, I mentioned Lana because this was the show where the fans started chanting, "We want Lana." And I don't know if someone told her to do it. I don't know if it was an ad-lib on her part, but it was just such a great ad-lib or moment, or just it felt very natural, let me put it that way. She got up on the apron and started waving, and I thought that was like, wow, I don't know whose idea it was to do that, but, good on whoever it was. But for me, the MVP of the night has to go to Seth Rollins. Mainly for the main event where he cashed in the Money in the Bank, gave us that memorable moment, spared us a Roman Reigns coronation, which we were all dreading, and ended WrestleMania on a very memorable note. First time Money in the Bank has ever been cashed in at WrestleMania, and it was very memorable and kind of saved the main event from the disaster we were all expecting it to be. But he also had the match of the night earlier in the show. That match he had with Orton I thought was really, really good. Well-built feud. For a mid-level match at WrestleMania, this wasn't promoted as one of the big main events or anything, but you got two upper-tier guys at this point. Seth was going to be world champion by the end of the night. They went out there, had a really solid match with one of the coolest finishes I've ever seen, where Seth was going for the curb stomp, got propelled up into the air, Orton popped back up and caught him with the RKO on the way down. 1, 2, 3, Orton gets the win, setting up Orton as a future contender for Seth's title. So it was nice they had some level of forward thinking going there. But I thought Seth was the standout performer of the night for having both the match of the night and having that memorable moment in the main event. So, Seth Rollins, this was his show. It was his night. And least valuable player. Got 2 options here. I was thinking about giving it to Undertaker, who, I've said it before, and I'll say it again, I did not like his performance in that match with Bray Wyatt. I didn't like that Bray Wyatt had to put him over for no reason. I was like, why is this even happening? Bray Wyatt is the guy that you should be prepping up to be the next Undertaker, and instead you're just jobbing him out to everybody. And here we are 2 years later, and Bray Wyatt feels like a broken, damaged character that they've just run into the ground. But, I thought Taker looked really just out of his element in this match, shall we say. He looked past his prime, shall we say. And I don't like it. I didn't like the way Taker looked. It's always sad to see the guys you like deteriorate. And Taker in the last few years has gotten really bad. And this one, the performance at 30 was bad, but people chalked that up to a concussion. This one is like, no, I think he's just old. I think we're done. I think we're done here. But I'm gonna give least valuable player to Triple H. And I know I've been hard on Triple H before, especially at WrestleMania season, where it seems like, a lot of the time at WrestleMania he bombs. It happens with him very frequently. 25, 18, 22, that match I hate so much. WrestleMania 2000, which admittedly that one wasn't his fault, but still wasn't good. Dude, you had one job at this show. You had one freaking job. Just put Sting over. Like, what would it have killed you to put Sting over? Come on, man. And then he, this was the perfect opportunity to give Sting a win at WrestleMania, because it's like, all right, if you put him up against Taker, which they probably should have just done that match at this show anyway, unless Taker didn't want to do it for whatever reason. But if they were just going to have Sting lose his first match, might as well have it be to Taker. But it's like, this is Sting's first match in the WWE, his first WrestleMania match. He's going to be challenging Seth Rollins for the WWE title later that year, which I assume they knew in advance. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. But I'm thinking, it's like, all right, it makes all the sense in the world for Sting to go over someone like Triple H, who's a part-timer, semi-retired guy, as big as he's ever going to be. The loss doesn't hurt him, and the fans who are fans of Sting get to feel good that Sting got a win at WrestleMania. If it were someone like Seth Rollins or even Roman Reigns that was put in there with Sting, I would advocate for Seth or Roman to go over, because I'm sick and tired of the young generation, the new guys, the present, being sacrificed to the past generation. It's an unfortunate habit that seems to happen all the time. And, excuse me, even if it's Sting, and I love Sting to death, it's like, no, you can't justify, Sting going over someone that you're prepping up to be a top star. It just doesn't make sense. It's stupid. It brings his stock down, and it doesn't really do that much for Sting. It just gives you the feel-good moment of Sting's victory, but that's fleeting, and that'll hurts this young guy in the long run. Beating Triple H doesn't hurt anybody in the long run. Doesn't hurt a soul. Give us the feel-good moment. There was no reason not to do it here. And then Triple H came out later in the show and was a part of that really long segment where he took a bump from Ronda Rousey and that whole shit, and acted like he wasn't even in a match earlier that night. I'm like, oh my god, you fuck. This is, it's those things. Yes, Triple H is a talented worker. Yes, he's a great talent in various other areas. Yes, NXT's great, and he's got a great mind for the business. He's very smart when it comes to wrestling, but god damn it, see, that's part of the problem. He's very smart at wrestling. He knows how to make himself look good and how to make other guys look bad. But just for the damage he did, and just for shitting on everyone's parade by going over Sting when no one wanted him to, it was like, for no benefit. It's like, all right, yeah, he gets heel heat, but then he goes right back into semi-retirement, and we forget about him until he wins the world title the next year at the Royal Rumble because Seth got hurt in that whole fiasco. But whatever. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't like it. Like Mr. Horse and Ren and Stimpy. No, sir. Didn't like it. Anyway, that's WrestleMania 31. Let's go to WrestleMania 30. Now, MVP, very obvious. This was one of the easiest picks when I was putting this list together. It's got to be Daniel Bryan. He had an excellent match with Triple H in the opener, and after I just bashed Triple H for the last few minutes, Triple H was very good here. He made Bryan look great. He put him over clean, set him up for the main event. And then Orton Batista participated very well. Batista giving Daniel Bryan the tap out. Great things all around, giving Daniel Bryan his night in the sun. And that match, I said it, I've watched that match 3 times, and every time I watch it, I still wait for them to pull the rug out from under us. I'm like, are they really going to do this, or are they just gonna fuck with us again? And no, they gave Daniel Bryan his night in the sun after all the months of constantly yanking, pulling the plug on the Daniel Bryan push. They finally got pushed into a corner where they had to do it after Punk's walkout and the fans pretty much demanding it. They had to put Daniel Bryan in that spot, and they did. It resulted in one of the most satisfying WrestleMania endings in recent memory. So yeah, Daniel Bryan, clearly MVP. There are a few other guys that stood out a little bit. I already mentioned Triple H, who absolutely was top of his game at this particular WrestleMania, and Brock Lesnar for ending the streak. I mean, that was memorable and historic. The match itself sucked, but that is something that's worthy of notice. But yeah, there was no one else but Daniel Bryan. It had to be Bryan for MVP. Now, LVP. I thought about being mean and giving it to Taker. His performance was not good. This was his first Mania match in a while that had been really bad, actually. Because he had been on that streak where he had the 2 with Michaels and the 2 with Triple H and the 1 with Punk, where it's like, oh my god, Triple H's WrestleMania Undertaker's WrestleMania matches are amazing. Some people would throw the match with Edge in there, and I'm like, it was good. I wouldn't call it great. The match with Batista was a very good one. So it's like his string of WrestleManias leading into that one had been very strong. This one, Taker did not look good, and some said that was because of a concussion that he got very early on in the match, which unfortunately led to him having to stumble around for half an hour to, basically have Brock Lesnar lead the dance in this really boring, really terrible match. And then the streak ended, and everybody just kind of lost their goddamn minds and forgot that the match sucked. They were just shocked that the streak ended. So, because of that historic moment, I feel like I can't give it to Taker, so he kind of gets spared. Had Taker gone over in this match, I would have said, yes, Taker. This was awful. Just absolutely awful. And the streak got preserved, so nothing was accomplished. But, so I'm not going to give it to Taker. I'm going to give it to the unfortunate souls that had to go out there after the streak had ended, and that's the poor Divas division who, AJ Lee and all the girls that were in that match, where they crammed the whole Divas division into one match, which is never a good sign when they do that. But they go out there, and it's like, oh shit, the crowd's angry, and they're totally apathetic to what we're doing. They're just pissed that the streak ended, and they had to go out there and kind of be the buffer for the main event. It's kind of like when Rey Mysterio came out at 30 when everybody was expecting Daniel Bryan to win the Royal Rumble that year. And, they just booed the hell out of Rey Mysterio. It's like, guys, don't shoot the messenger, It's like, guys, come on, don't be mean to the girls. They didn't ask for this. But, it wasn't very good. And, fortunately, the Divas have gotten a bit higher, prestige on the show. And it looks like they're going to have an even bigger role at this year's WrestleMania. But at WrestleMania 30, they were kind of the poor unfortunate souls that got thrown out there in front of an angry mob. They're the least valuable players, but it's due to circumstances beyond their control. So that brings me to WrestleMania 2, one of the early ones. And one of the more unique WrestleMania, shall we say, in that the entire card was spread out over 3 venues in 3 different time zones. First part of the show was in New York, second part was in Chicago, and the third part was in LA. And I thought about giving MVP to the production team because they actually had to sync all that shit together, and the fact that show is even remotely coherent is remarkable and amazing, and they deserve a pat on the back for that. So I thought about just straight up giving it to the WWF production team in 1986, but looking up and down the card, I was looking at, there a couple of guys stood out a little bit. I thought Roddy Piper saved the boxing match. I know a lot of people hate that match and has a dubious reputation, and it's notoriously bad among wrestling scholars. Personally, I thought Roddy made it entertaining. It could have been worse. It could have been a lot worse. I thought Roddy kind of saved it from being a disaster. But Randy Savage, I thought, had a standout performance in the Intercontinental title match against George Steele. I thought the British Bulldogs and the Dream Team had the match of the night in the Tag Team Championship match. That match was very good. Andre the Giant won the WWF NFL Battle Royal, big highlight moment for his legendary career. Hulk Hogan won the main event. Only steel cage match, first WWF World Title match in WrestleMania history. So that's noteworthy. But I have decided to give MVP to one of the celebrity guest stars. namely one of the participants in the aforementioned WWF NFL Battle Royal. I'm going to give it to William the Refrigerator Perry, who, in front of that Chicago crowd who loved him, I mean, the 85 Chicago Bears were more than just a great NFL team and more than just one of the greatest teams in NFL history and more than just a dominant Super Bowl championship team. They were like a pop culture phenomenon when you look at things like the Super Bowl Shuffle and all the other things. Like, people loved the Chicago Bears in 85. They were, all these interesting characters like Walter Payton and Jim McMahon, who's like an asshole, but kind of a likable asshole. Not the greatest quarterback of all time. It's like, God, he's kind of fun, though. And you had Coach Ditka. If Coach Ditka got into a fight with a hurricane, who would win, Coach Ditka or the hurricane? I don't cheat on my wife. She loves me. She called me her Ditka. I'm her Ditka. Anyway, the 85 Bears were cool, and William Perry going out there in front of the Chicago crowd, it got a huge pop. The fans were totally into him, and I thought he made the match exciting. I thought he had some really cool standout moments, namely his stuff with Big John Studd. John Studd getting a part in another major WrestleMania moment. The year before, he was in the Slam match, and here he gets to be in the highlight spot with William the Refrigerator Perry. It's just a good use of a celebrity, if nothing else, and it made for a fun battle royal. Kind of one of those like circus tent attractions. Like, oh hey, look at all these people that we threw in here. We got Andre and Bruno and Big John Studd, and we got all these NFL stars like William Perry. And it's like, it was fun. It was just a fun match, and William Perry was the most exciting part of it. So I'm gonna give him most valuable player for WrestleMania 2. Now, least valuable player. Had a few different options here. I know a lot of people like to mock Corporal Kirshner. Personally, I don't think he was bad enough on this show to warrant overly mocking. I thought about giving it to Velvet McIntyre, whose wardrobe malfunction basically ruined the women's title match. They had to go home within a minute because a strap popped on Velvet McIntyre's swimsuit or wrestling gear, and Moolah had to pin her quick just so she could cover up and get out of there as fast as possible. Most unfortunate, one of the more memorable botches in WrestleMania history. You had Uncle Elmer and Adrian Adonis just stunk up the joint in a really terrible match. It's just two fat guys bouncing off each other. So that didn't really work. But I'm going to give least valuable player. Again, I'm going to go with the celebrities here. The guest commentators. Minus Kathy Lee Crosby. I didn't think she was that bad. She was on the Chicago team with Gorilla Monsoon, and I believe Ernie Ladd. I think Ernie Ladd was there at the booth. But I think, if memory serves me right, it was Vince McMahon and Susan St. James in New York. Kathy Lee Crosby, Gorilla Monsoon, and Ernie Ladd in Chicago. And then Ventura, Lord Alfred Hayes, and Elvira. Elvira in LA. There's actually a WrestleMania main event that was called by Elvira. The 80s were weird, and the early WrestleManias, there was a lot of experimentation. That's pretty much all I can say. But I'm going to spare Kathy Lee Crosby because I didn't think she was that bad. She clearly, not her realm, not her skill set, but I thought she made it through well enough to where, it wasn't too much of a disaster. And arguably, the flag match was over quick. The women's title match was over quick. And then you had the NFL Battle Royal and the tag title match. So, the Chicago portion was probably the easiest one to call because you had two really exciting matches and you had two, quick and they were blink of an eye, they were done matches. So, she probably had the best overall material to work with. Susan St. James in the New York portion of the show seems like a lovely lady. Unfortunately, not her skill set. Sometimes I think Vince gets the idea in his head that anybody can do this. And that's not true. It's like you need a lot of knowledge. You need to have a great voice. You need to be passionate about wrestling. I don't know if she was any of those things. I don't think it was lack of intrigue because she seemed invested in the Savage George Steele match. So I don't think it was a lack of investment necessarily. I just think she just wasn't very good, and it's a hard job to do. I don't want to bash her too much, but she should have never been put in that spot. And if you have bad commentary, it really drags the show down because you're having to listen to these yahoos yammer on and on and on about God knows what. I mean, there's a reason why Raw is just a miserable experience, or at least it was until some of the recent change-ups. But, you know, it was, Susan St. James was terrible. And I thought Elvira, who, again, I'm an 80s kid. I think Elvira's a fun personality, very likable, and I love horror movies, so, you know, I did watch some of those, like, late-night shows she would host and everything, but oh my God, she was so bad. She was so bad. Like, and especially in the main event. Like, you have no idea how terrible she was. Go and listen to it and tell me it's not like the worst commentary you've ever heard for any wrestling match ever. Except maybe Heroes of Wrestling or whatever that pay-per-view was. But, yeah, it was really bad. So, you've got this WrestleMania held from 3 different venues, and for 2/3 of that show, your ears are just bleeding because the commentary is so bad. Unfortunately, you know, there are other guest commentators throughout the years, and I thought Bob Uecker did pretty well. I thought Regis Philbin, surprisingly, did pretty well at 7. It wasn't horrible anyway, so it's, you know, it's not something that's completely failed on them, but Susan St. James and Elvira did not work and were terrible and should have never been put in those positions. If you have to have them there, I would have used them as interviewers. You know, I think that would have been a better way to use them. But you know, it's a shame that Elvira wasn't around when The Undertaker was. I think pairing those two up would have been quite interesting, to say the least. But anyway, that pretty much concludes this video. Yeah, we've got 3 more WrestleManias down, so that's 9, and a bunch more to go, as we have 8 more videos to fill. So, yeah, the series is going to be continuing. Be on the lookout. There'll be more out next week. But that is all I have for you now. So, y'all enjoy your weekend, and I will see you all later.